Hi, my name is Cassie, and normally I am Cassie, the English teacher, but I wanted to make a series of videos about our move to Uruguay. Myself and my husband and our 2 children moved here about a year and a half ago. We live in Montevideo, Uruguay. And I have a lot of questions about what it's like to live here. So I thought I'd make a series of videos about that, and maybe that's going to be helpful to somebody out there. I don't know. But I thought I'd start out with 5 good things about living here and 5 maybe negative things. So if you're kind of just thinking about it, if it's just recently popped up on your radar, this is a great video. I hope to give you kind of the good and the bad and what you might expect to experience if you move here. I will preface this by saying I'm not an immigration attorney. I'm not an accountant or a doctor. I'm just a teacher. And so I can only share our experience. We also live in the capital city of Montevideo. There is an entire interior that has a vastly different life experience than living in the biggest city in the country. So keep that all in mind. And again, these are just my opinions. These are my experiences. Everybody who comes here has a different experience. So I'm going to start out with 5 good things, 5 things I love about this country, about this city, and then I'll talk about 5 things that some people dislike. I even have a hard time saying that they're cons to me because I really love living here. But I do want to be transparent and honest with people if they're considering a move here, that there's, like with any country in the world, there's going to be good things, there's going to be bad things, and it's kind of your personality and how that fits in with the country you choose to live in. So, okay, pros. Number 1, this is an extremely progressive country. Uruguay decriminalized homosexuality in the 1930s. They allowed women to be equal to men in terms of having bank accounts, having jobs, etc. in the 1950s. So a couple of decades before the US. The general culture of things is to be very open-minded, to be very, not in other people's business very much. So it's not even necessarily that it's progressive in terms of like rah, LGBTQ rights, let's have a parade, da-da-da. There is a pride parade, but it's not even so much as this is an affirming thing, and it's really more of, who cares? Who cares? Everybody does their own thing, and as long as it's not bothering me, I don't care, right? So that leads to a lot of things being accepted or legalized that aren't accepted or legalized in other places, like marijuana is legal here. Sex work is legal here, has been for a long time. It is a very non-religious country, so a lot of the politics don't have that same like culture war nonsense that the US has. As you can tell, I'm from the US, so I'm going to compare it to the US a lot. I'm sorry, I know there's the rest of the world, but I'm kind of comparing my experience in the US versus my experience here. And I really enjoy just how progressive and open-minded this country is. They also value stability a lot. There was a dictatorship in the 80s, and so many people are still around that remember that very vividly. There's actually a week in May that it is remembered. There's a symbol, there are sayings, and they actually post pictures of people who were killed during the dictatorship as kind of we never want to go back. That quest for stability, that cultural value of that's none of my business, really leads to a society that the politicians aren't spending a whole lot of time on culture war nonsense. The politics are very much about For example, we just went through an election. Actually, I'm filming this on the inauguration day of the new president. And from my understanding, again, my limited understanding as somebody who's only been here a year and a half, the whole political fight was about retirement funds and how retirement funds should be held and what the retirement age should be, things like that. So very like money, government function things, and not so much culture war, divisive things like in some other countries around the world. Number 2, the people here are extremely kind, welcoming, and generous. I mean, this isn't incredibly uncommon in Latin America, obviously, that it's a very cultural thing to be kind and welcoming and generous. Well, if you're from a country that is not necessarily a very kind country, you will notice a difference almost immediately. So, for example, I have 2 elementary age children. Maybe the second or third day we were here, we went to the park. My kids didn't, when we arrived, speak Spanish. Of course, the park is full of kids, and my kids were just walking up to other kids. We taught them how to say, like, ¿Puedo jugar contigo? And they would just walk up and say that, and the other kids like, oh, yeah, and they just played all day long. And a really sweet thing was one of the kids came up to my husband and said, asked in Spanish, how do you say let's be friends in English, which melted our hearts. The kids here have been super kind and welcoming to my children. They immediately had friends at school, in our neighborhood. It has not been a challenge to make friends, even adult friends. For us, we're in different clubs, we're in different sports activities, and people are kind. For example, I talked to a friend who was visiting on a scouting trip, and they really like birds. So the 2 of them were kind of following this bird around and taking pictures of it. And a man came up to them and was trying to tell them about the bird, but he didn't speak English and they didn't speak Spanish. But he was like, they were pulling out translation apps, and he just really wanted them to know about the bird because he could tell they really like birds. You just have little interactions like that all the time where people are just really going out of their way to help you. When we first arrived, I didn't know where to find anything, so I would go basically to the little corner store where we were buying like our water and snacks, and I didn't know words for things sometimes, and I would just hold up a picture on my phone, and she would say, oh, okay, and she would draw me a map and tell me, okay, go here, and it's the merceria. People really go out of their way to help each other. There's also like a lot more mixing of generations, I've noticed. People really love children here. My kids, like everywhere we go, they kind of know like the waiters, they know the people who own the stores. Every time we walk in, they go give them a hug and kisses. There's like a lot of love. And a lot of that goes both ways. Like I was walking down the street, and there was an older lady who was trying to cross the street, and she just kind of swatted me, and she was like, Joven, help me cross the street. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, sure. And I actually helped her walk like a couple of blocks. And in talking to her, she's like, yeah, I do this every day. I just need help crossing the street. So I just get somebody to help me, which just struck me as something that is very different than where I came from. Number 3, so the transportation system is wonderful, the public transportation system. So I live in the city again, so I have plenty of buses to take. Buses come pretty often. For example, for me to go to work, I basically walk downstairs and half a block to the corner, and the bus that I take to work comes every 6 minutes. And there's actually a few different ones I could take. The one I like to take comes every 6 minutes. There's no need to own a car, especially if you live in the city. But even the 4 of us have traveled all over the country by bus. So even when we travel out up the coast, like we went to La Paloma for a vacation, which is pretty far up the coast, we took a bus. And when we got there, we took a cab to our hotel, and we took cabs everywhere while we were there. It was not a problem. It's really wonderful that you don't need to have a car. I haven't driven a car in 18 months, and I have never been happier because I lived in Houston, so I hate driving. And if I never drive again, I will be super happy. And I can do that here because you can get anywhere you need to get on a bus. And it's cheap, it's easy. And another feature of the bus system is that you'll often have musicians come on. And I realize that that might be a con for some people. I love it though. And they're all different. Like the other night, a saxophone player was playing. You'll have somebody with a violin, a guitar. One day a guy jumped on the bus with like a boombox, and he was like freestyle rapping, and he was like going around the bus asking for ideas, and he just made a wrap up on the spot. Like, have all kind of fun things that happen on the bus. And so I personally love it. I love not having all of the expense and maintenance of a personal vehicle. Number 4, the healthcare system. The healthcare system here is wonderful. It's very inexpensive. So they have free government healthcare, and then they have like a private system of mutualistas. And I'm actually going to make a whole other video about healthcare because it is pretty involved. But what I will say, after being here a year and a half, I like to say we really have stress tested the healthcare system. When we first moved here, I kind of thought, oh my gosh, this is too good to be true. There's no way it's this cheap and it's still good. But my daughter was in the ICU for 5 days, and so we really got to see the healthcare system, and we had a wonderful experience. She was treated very well. She got absolutely fabulous care. I cannot praise the healthcare system enough. I recently have been having knee problems, and I went to get an MRI, and so after paying not $0 because I realized like I pay taxes towards it, but after paying $0 for healthcare outside of my taxes, I paid $15 for an MRI. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm never going back. Like I can't go back to a healthcare system where our family of 4 used to pay $30,000 a year for healthcare. When I get better healthcare here for almost free. So the healthcare system is wonderful. I will make another video about that though, because I feel like I could probably talk for an hour about it. Number 5, art, culture, and music are everywhere. So even just walking around, you're going to see murals all over the place. There's just murals on so many surfaces. There are lots and lots of museums full of art. My kids in school do lots of art. They study art. There's music, like I talked about on the bus, but there are also theaters that do music. There's just a value behind music, and architecture, culture, just walking around. It's just all around you. There's this beautiful, very European architecture, especially in Ciudad Vieja, which is like the old city. Absolutely gorgeous. I actually snapped a picture once, and I took a picture of when my mom and I went to Italy, and I put them side by side, and I was asking people which one's Italy and which one's Uruguay, and people couldn't tell because it's very, like, just the architecture is beautiful, and there's just a focus on making life enjoyable. And so that's the murals, that's, people busking on the bus or on the street, that's the theater, that's colleges. It's also, there's neighborhood clubs. So I'm from the South in the US, and where I'm from, the neighborhood hub, if you wanted to have like a community place, was a church, right? But like I've already said, the majority of this country is non-religious. So instead of that happening at a church, every neighborhood has little clubs. And so you belong to your little neighborhood club, and your club is going to have activities for everyone from small children up to elderly people. So it's going to have, like the club we belong to has a lot of sports for kids, but then also sports for adults like football and karate and exercise classes. It also has flamenco classes for adults. It has a choir. It has Celtic bowling, which I still don't really know what that is, but I see the signs for it. There's just lots of things that you can do, and they're all really cheap and available because they're in your neighborhood. So it's not, I don't know how to put into words exactly. There's just more of a value on work doesn't define who you are. You work and then you get off work and you go do something fun. You go do your hobbies. You go do art. You go do music. You go do sports. You go do culture. Okay, so those are all of the pros. Those aren't all of the pros. I could probably talk for a long time about all of the pros. Those are the 5 pros that I decided to put in this video. Let's talk about some of the cons. The biggest disadvantage is that it is difficult to find work here. It is a country of 3 million people, so there's not a lot of industry. And the people here are very well educated, and so that there's not like a high demand for foreigners to come in and work jobs. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible to get a job here, but you do have to be fluent in Spanish. I often see on expat groups, people will say, oh, they don't give jobs to foreigners. Well, that's not exactly true. I work here and my husband works here for a tech company, and we're foreigners, but my husband speaks Spanish as his first language. So, it was easier for him to get that job, and he had a lot of skills and he was really well qualified for the job he was trying to get. And I've talked to other friends here who have said they get really annoyed when people say, oh, they don't give jobs to foreigners, because they said, I've been beaten out of a job by a Venezuelan woman who was more qualified, right? So it's not that they don't allow foreigners to have jobs. It's more that you need to speak Spanish, like obviously, right? So if you're planning to move here and you're not fluent in Spanish, you need to have a remote job. You need to have some kind of income that's going to sustain you. You cannot just come here and try to figure it out once you get here. I mean, I'm sure people do that. I shouldn't say you cannot. It would be really difficult. Number 2 is that there are fewer choices for goods and services. So this is going to vary depending on where you are also, because there are some big box stores like out in Carrasco. I live in the city, so I go to my neighborhood like corner store to get my groceries. So it's going to depend, right? There are some big supermarkets, but for the most part, your neighborhood supermarket is going to be kind of like if you've ever shopped at an Aldi, where, okay, there's one brand of ketchup, maybe 2, but there's like 1 or 2 brands of each thing you might need. If you go to a larger grocery store like Disco Fresh Market or Tienda Inglesa, the prices are going to be a lot higher because imported goods have a high tariff placed on them. So you can get the Uruguayan ketchup or barbecue sauce or whatever for a pretty cheap price, but if you get something imported, it's going to be more expensive, like probably double. The same thing goes for example, makeup. Makeup is much more expensive here. The Maybelline mascara that I buy in the US for about $8, $9 at the grocery store, here at the grocery store is $20. Again, because of the tariff, and because that tariff and the extra paperwork means that there are fewer options. So then those options are more expensive also. So not only do you have fewer options, but they're going to be more expensive. So if you're somebody who has like particular things that you need to have, or you really like to have particular brands, you may not be able to find those here. We get around it because we have family members who come visit us from the US, maybe once or twice a year. We're just like, hey, can you bring me like 4 tubes of mascara? Because it's so expensive here. But, that's annoying, right? It's annoying to have to do those things. Spices can be hard to find. Not normal kind of run-of-the-mill spices, but for example, my husband's from Mexico. I cook Mexican food really well, and there's certain things I just cannot buy here. I cannot find them, and it's very frustrating to not be able to cook the authentic dish that I would be able to cook back home. I hear the same thing I have some friends from India that say the same thing. Yeah, like I can approximate it with some of the spices, but I can't get the real thing. Uruguayans do not like spicy food. That's changing a little bit, but for the most part, do not like spicy food. So you're not going to find like really spicy chiles. You're not going to find really spicy salsa. There are some small brands that are starting to make it, but even those are, for our family, on the mild side. So stuff like that. You just kind of have to shift what you are used to what you can get. The food is pretty seasonal. So I tend to shop at the feria, which is like the street market, and they're selling whatever's kind of in season right now. So, you're not going to get strawberries in the middle of winter. That's just not going to happen. They're not available, right? So, it's, again, this is kind of is it a bug or a feature thing? Because I like having the freshest possible food, and the food here is really high quality. It's just seasonal. So it's an adjustment for some people. Number 3, it's a much higher cost of living than the rest of South America. So if you're comparing prices of rent or utilities or food or services, everything, basically, you're going to spend more here than you would spend in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, anywhere else in South America. Montevideo has the highest cost of living in South America. Now, that comes because it's very stable. So the housing market is stable, but it's higher priced, right? So, there's kind of a cost-benefit analysis there. But don't come here expecting to be able to live a lot cheaper than wherever you're coming from. Now, when I say that, for our family, we live on much, much less here than we did in the U.S. because the healthcare and the transportation are nearly free for us. And those things combined in the U.S. cost us about $50,000 a year. So I say it's a high cost of living. We're saving about half of our yearly budget on those 2 items. But our rent and utilities and things are pretty much equal to what they would be in San Antonio, Texas, for example. So if you're like a digital nomad looking to stretch your dollar, you probably want to go somewhere else. Number 4, if you are, especially if you're from the U.S., you probably are pretty spoiled with being able to just jump on Amazon, order something same-day shipping, looking on Google Maps, I want this thing, where do I find it? And you never have to talk to a human being to find what you need, and you can go get it or have it delivered. Done, right? Here, Google is pretty much useless in my experience. If I want to know where to get something, I have to talk to somebody. I have to go down to the Almacén, which is like a bodega in New York City. I have to go down there and I have to chat with my friend Diana and ask her, okay, I need this thing. Where in the heck would I buy this, right? Or, you just kind of end up on these little kind of side quests where you go somewhere and you're like, I'm looking for this. Like, we don't have it, but this store down the street might. And you kind of end up spending a couple hours and talking to a lot of different people to find what you need. At the hardware store, if you need to buy something, it's not like Lowe's. You don't just walk around and pick up what you need. You got to go to the counter and he's going to get it for you. So you have to talk to him, right? And you have to talk in Spanish. So I personally think that's a good thing because it makes me feel less lonely, especially when we first arrived. I was just forced to talk to people every day, several times a day, and that when you first arrive and you don't have any friends yet, that is a good thing, right? It makes you feel part of the community. But if I were an extreme introvert, I would hate living here. That would be really hard for me. So you have to be able to chat with people. You have to be able to ask for help. It's very ask culture here. If you want something, you ask for it. They're not going to oh, you need this. You got to ask. So that's kind of a struggle, just culture-wise. Another part of that is that the greeting here is to kiss on the cheek. And everybody kisses you on the cheek. Like the teachers I work with, who are my coworkers, we kiss on the cheek when we see each other. When I go to the store, I kiss the store owner on the cheek because I see her every day. When we go to the restaurant, we kiss the waiters on the cheek because we see them pretty often. Even I had to sign some bank paperwork and the lady brought it. She kissed me on the cheek when she got here. You're going to get kissed a lot. And again, I personally enjoy that. It makes me feel less lonely and I think it's a loving atmosphere. But my mom came to visit and she was horrified. She was like, I would actually die if somebody kissed me on the cheek. I do not want to be touched by somebody I don't know. So if you are a very introverted, don't touch me, personal bubble person, you might not like living here very much. Okay, and number 5. This is another thing that's a feature but can be a bug sometimes. So here they like to say tranqui. Everybody says tranqui all the time, which just means tranquil, like peace, calm down. So when I first arrived, my kids would be being noisy in the store and I would be apologizing and the owner would say tranqui, it's fine, just peace, it's no big deal. Which I love, right? And if we're taking forever to do something, nobody's rushing us. If you're in the restaurant and you sit there for 5 hours talking, the waiter doesn't care. Nobody's trying to rush you out of your table. It's a very slow-paced life. You get to it when you get to it, right? Now, 98% of the time, I am all about this tranquila life. I love it. I'm yes, this is great. This is, I'm late to everything and nobody cares. This is wonderful. This is my paradise, right? 2% of the time, I would like people to be less tranqui. 2% of the time, for example, our refrigerator broke almost 2 weeks ago. And we've had 2 different technicians come in and the first one was supposed to come back and then he just never did. And then the second one kind of did something. He's like, I'll come back and try something else. And then, I'll come back in a week. And I'm like, I need a refrigerator. I really want you to fix my fridge. So that is the 2% of the time that very laid back attitude can bite you a little bit. You're kind of hey, I'm all about it, but really I need to be able to buy milk again. Please help me. So yeah, that's the downside of it. Again, I kind of, even when I'm frustrated with that, I kind of think of the good side of it and yeah, but nobody ever rushes us. If I'm behind on getting something to somebody, they don't care either. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad. So I hope that has been helpful. Again, those are my opinions and my experience, and I've only been here 1.5 years, so I'm not the expert. I'm not Uruguayan. I would absolutely love comments from Uruguayans about what I said. If anything I said was wrong or maybe didn't paint the full accurate picture, please let me know, because obviously I very much love this country, and I want to give people an accurate portrayal of how wonderful it is. But it is wonderful if your values and your personalities align with it. I think it's a wonderful place to live for us. But I know people who would very much not enjoy living here. So I just kind of want to get that out there and let everybody know what to expect. If you have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll try to answer it, or maybe I'll make a whole new video about that. Like I said, I'm going to make a series of videos. I'm going to do one on healthcare. I'm going to do one on schools. I want to do one about Carnival because that just ended and I had a blast. So let me know what questions you have, what videos you would like to see, and I will see you next time. Bye.